We begin with troubling new images from the border. Human beings held by the U.S. government in inhumane conditions. We have heard the horror stories for weeks. Sick children in unsanitary conditions. A migrant woman told to drink water from a toilet. The president called the reports phony. And on Friday, the vice president and several Republican members of Congress went to the border to prove the critics wrong and to showcase the treatment of detained migrants. It became a tale of two detention centers. At the first stop, the vice president toured a facility built just 2 months ago, housing children. It appeared clean and well-stocked with snacks and other supplies. Some children telling the vice president they were being well cared for.
But they're taking good care of you here.
Te están cuidando bien aquí.
Sí.
Tú hablas inglés.
Very good.
But what came next? A haunting scene at a temporary overflow facility in McAllen, Texas. Nearly 400 men packed behind cage-like fencing, no cots or beds to sleep on. Washington Post reporter Josh Dawsey, who was traveling with the vice president, put it this way. Some of the men were sleeping on concrete. When the men saw the press arrive, they began shouting and wanted to tell us they'd been in there for 40 days or longer. The men said they were hungry and wanted to brush their teeth. It was sweltering hot. Agents were guarding the cages wearing face masks. All told, the cameras were only allowed inside for 4 minutes. The VP there for even less time.
I was not surprised by what I saw. It's overwhelmed, and that's why Congress has to act.
The vice president was in there for just 90 seconds, seeing one grim snapshot of a crisis that appears to have overwhelmed those responsible for dealing with it. For more on this, let's bring in our first guest, Ken Cuccinelli, Acting Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And I want to start with that video. I'd like you to take a look, watch these scenes from McAllen, Texas. And I want to read a little bit more from Josh Dawsey's report on what he saw. He writes, a stench from body odor hung in the air. It was sweltering hot. The only water was outside the fences and needed to ask permission from the Border Patrol agents to drink. According to one of those agents, many of those men had not had showers for 10 to 20 days. So I know the system is overwhelmed.
Right.
How can this happen in the United States of America?
Well, because Congress has let it happen. It's that simple. I mean, look at just the supplemental appropriation last month. It was overwhelmingly focused on children, and all of us prioritize care for children. And in 1 month, we went from about 2,500 kids in overcrowded, being in CBP detention facilities, down to about 300 some odd, with only a handful of those past the 72-hour metric that is when we try to ship kids out of Border Patrol custody. So when Congress provides the professionals at the border what they need, success happens. Success being measured as avoiding overcrowding.
But, okay, so, and I understand that there was a request from the administration back in February for 52,000 more beds, but how can you allow this to happen if you don't have the resources? You can't detain these people, can you? Isn't that a basic human rights violation?
No. I mean, they're being fed. They're being, as you
they don't even have enough
yourself,
space to lie down.
Well, you know, that's a reality of facilities not designed to handle the swamping at the border. We've had 4 months in a row with over 100,000 apprehensions. In May was the lead spike in that, and over 70% of that was families and children, what were worst designed to handle in terms of detention. And
but Ken,
your alternative is to let them all go.
Exactly.
And that is the wrong alternative. You have just said, don't worry about the law. We're going to ignore the border. Well,
isn't there also a law about how you treat human beings? Aren't there?
There are standards.
Standards,
yes,
and international standards. There are human rights. If you can't detain them humanely, you have an alternative, which is what was done for many years before, which is to release them and ask them to come back for their asylum hearings.
And of course, many of them never show up. And this president promised to change exactly that pattern of behavior that you just described, and he is doing his best to achieve that. Some of what you described has happened even under President Trump because of overwhelming numbers. At the same time, all of us in the Department of Homeland Security and beyond are trying to manage these numbers as best we can by shortening processing times, by making ourselves more efficient on that front, and when Congress does help, as they did with children last month, with appropriate facilities for the appropriate detainees. But look, they can also go home, which is our preference when they come illegally here. And the people, I deal with asylum in my agency, and the people really claiming asylum with no basis, just totally fraudulently, are clogging a system for legitimate asylum seekers. They're caught in this too. Let's not forget the people who are consistent with our laws. They're swept up in this too.
But when you look at those conditions, I mean, even the most hardened criminals in our criminal justice system are not treated like that. Death row inmates don't live in conditions like that.
Well, that's because we have a much slower flow of people coming into our prisons. There isn't a sudden spike. I was in El Paso 2 weeks ago, where you followed the vice president around, I believe, and they have gone in that sector of the border from the 6th busiest sector at the end of 2018 to number 2 in literally a matter of months. So even when we look at more than the raw numbers coming across the border, but how they're shifting. And let's not forget, the drug cartels on the other side of the border have an awful lot to do with how those flows come over here, and they are monetizing it. They're making a killing off of these people.
So when is this going to end?
This is going to end when we close asylum loopholes and we stop attracting people here illegally.
So you're saying that
to try and overwhelm the system and do exactly what you described, and that's just release them into the interior when they'll never show up again.
So this is going to go on until Congress passes laws that show no sign of going anywhere right now.
As you saw, the June numbers came way down from May. We expect to be taking steps on the administration side to reduce the pull for folks to come here, even if Congress won't act. But look, there are things the Obama administration and the Trump administration agree on, things like keeping families together in detention, contrary and overdoing the Flores imposition by one judge. The Obama administration opposed that. The Trump administration has sought to fix it. The same thing with children who are, or the question remains whether they're trafficked, to determine whether they're trafficked. The Obama administration wanted to close the same loophole the Trump administration does. We can close those two loopholes on one piece of paper. One piece of paper. And when the House schedule came out between now and when they go on vacation.
I mean the loophole you're talking about is allowing families to be detained together. It still could be the same conditions. It doesn't deal with your overcrowding. But I want to move on to the ICE raids. The president said that there would be a big new effort for mass deportations. He suggested starting today. Is that going on? What's happening?
Well, we never talk about the details of days and
well, the president did. He said it was going to start today.
He's the president. I'm not the president.
Okay.
And look, I have a lot of respect for our ICE officers. They're loyal, they're compassionate, but they have a job to do, and it's a tough one, and made a lot tougher when a lot of people in Congress throw the vitriol at them that they are just for doing their job and enforcing the laws Congress put in place.
But what's going on? Why is the president telegraphing a big new effort to deport people?
Well, look, if we don't have interior enforcement, we don't have deterrence. Then people think they can get by that first line, just as you described earlier, and they're done. It's over. Well, it isn't over. And over 1 million people in this country who are here illegally have gone through extensive due process, have removal orders, and have not left. That's
how many of those people are you going to? How many people are you going to forcefully?
Well, we'll see how many ICE rolls on with, and it shows how far we've fallen. That it's even news that ICE is doing its job. This is their job every day. Is in
well, in fact, the numbers are fewer.
Yes.
Under you have fewer people being deported under.
That's right.
President Trump and under President Obama.
That's correct.
All right, Ken Cuccinelli, thank you for joining us here
Good to be
this
with
week.
you.
I appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.